Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for being here on Wesleyan's College campus. We're going to go ahead and get our series started for tonight. We're going to have a welcome by Dr. Rowan, president of CWN Careers Women's Network. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. Good evening. I am Dr. Barbara Rowan, president of the Career Women's Network of Macon, but also I am an adjunct graduate faculty here at Wesleyan College. And I am honored to welcome you to Wesleyan College for the Gail, Thompson, Webster-Patterson Endowed Lecture in Business. CWN is delighted to be a partnering sponsor for this event for the second year in a row. Like Wesleyan College, CWN is an organization whose focus is on empowering women. Founded in 1980 by a group of professional women whose aim was to provide a strong network of contacts for women to grow professionally, the organization continues to encourage members to be effective and visible community leaders while mentoring and sponsoring newcomers in their fields. CWN also supports education for women, offering scholarships to non-traditional women who are pursuing a bachelor's degree for the very first time. In fact, 2 of our 2024 scholarship recipients are Wesleyan College students. In addition, each year during Women's History Month in March, we honor a woman with the Women of Achievement Award for her achievements and contributions to the advancement of women, her community, and her profession, and recognize her role in promoting and mentoring women. I'm sure it comes as no surprise that several of our past recipients have ties to Wesleyan College as faculty, administration, or Board of Trustees members. CWN and Wesleyan College are natural partners, and we are delighted to join forces to bring you this evening's discussion on women driving transformational change. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy your evening.
Thank you, Dr. Rowan. At this time, we'll have opening remarks by Aisha Ellen, the Executive Director of Keeping Macon Be Beautiful. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. Whew, I tell you, it's not easy being an empowered woman, is it? I feel like I've been running a marathon all day today, but I am so grateful to be here. My name is Aisha Ellen, as Ken stated, and I'm the Executive Director of Keep Macon Be Beautiful. Keep Macon Be Beautiful has been serving the Macon-Bibb community for over 50 years. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for the citizens of Macon-Bibb County by providing educational resources and opportunities as it pertains to litter and waste reduction and beautification initiatives. Basically, our goal is to create a cleaner and greener environment. Education is the key to our overall goals and mission, which is why it is important that we have partnerships with institutions like Wesleyan College. As I think about the theme of tonight's program, Women Driving Transformational Change, it's important that we as women in leadership empower young women like the students here at Wesleyan College. We must be the driving force when it comes to inspiring, developing, and motivating our future leaders. I am proud of the relationship that Keep Macon Be Beautiful has developed with Wesleyan College. During my 2.5 years as the executive director, we have had 3 Wesleyan students to serve as interns in our office. And one of those interns, Isabel Beach, raise your hand, Isabel, now serves on our team as our volunteer coordinator. In addition, Dr. Ken Blair serves as a member of our board of directors. Keep Making Bid Beautiful has participated in numerous events and programs here at Wesleyan College. I don't think I recall ever saying no to a request from Wesleyan. You see, when I accepted the position as executive director of Keep Making Bid Beautiful, I was very intentional about including our local colleges and universities as a part of our strategic plan. As a transformational nonprofit leader, our role is to encourage, inspire, and motivate the next generation by creating meaningful change. Recently, I spoke to a group of high school students at my alma mater, Southwest High School here in Macon, and I asked the students what their expectations were from local community leaders and alumni. And one student, a female student might I add, responded and said, they simply just need us to show up. So sometimes as leaders, the first thing we have to do is simply show up. And I am proud to say that Keep Making Bid Beautiful will always show up when Wesleyan College and the women of Wesleyan College calls us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ellen. At this time, we'll have the overview, the acknowledgments, and introductions by our very own Professor Carol. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many faces here, so many of my students. Okay. I'm Professor Kara Kostuk, and I'm the chair of the Business and Economics Department here. And the purpose of the Gail, Webster-Patterson Endowed Speaker Series for Business is to bring distinguished speakers with profound knowledge and expertise in business practices, economics, accounting, health administration, and the like to the college to enhance the educational experience of students who are majoring or minoring in one of these disciplines. Thank you, Gail, for your continued very generous support. Born right here in Macon, I'd just like to make a special recognition. Born right here in Macon, Senator Sam Nunn served in the U.S. Senate representing Georgia for 24 years. And during that time, he made his mark working to keep America and the world safe. He helped draft and pass the Department of Defense Reorganization Act and also established the Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, that is a mouthful, which helps secure and dismantle excess nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons in Russia and former Soviet republics for over 20 years. After retiring from politics, he co-founded the Nuclear Threat Initiative with Ted Turner, a nonprofit, nonpartisan global security organization focused on reducing nuclear, biological, and emerging threats to humanity. Senator Nunn, thank you for all that you've done, and thank you for being here today. Okay, now on to our distinguished guest speaker, Michelle Nunn. As president and CEO of CARE, okay, that stands for Cooperative for American Remittances to Europe. I can understand why they just go by CARE. Michelle Nunn leads more than 8,000 people working in more than 100 countries to save lives, defeat poverty, and achieve social justice. In her 9 years at the helm, CARE has taken its fundraising and impact to new levels, reaching more than 167 million people in 2023. Michelle believes in human solidarity, that lasting impact comes from people advocating for change at the community level, and that the most powerful tools are often the most simplest. She co-founded the volunteer mobilization nonprofit Hands On America, led its 2007 merger with President George H.W. Bush's Points of Light, and was Points of Light CEO for 6 years. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa from the University of Virginia with a major in history and a minor in religion. She earned a master's in public administration from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and she received a Kellogg Fellowship to study faith and social justice in more than 12 countries. She lives in Atlanta with her family. So welcome, Michelle. Okay. Finally, our president, Megan Blight. As the 26th president of Wesleyan College, Megan Blight has dedicated herself to strengthening and champion the first college in the world chartered to grant degrees to women. Since taking on the role in July 2022, Blight has focused on fostering relationships with the Wesleyan community and beyond, growing Wesleyan College's reputation both domestically and internationally. During her tenure, Wesleyan College has seen significant enrollment growth while raising the academic standards and developing programs focused on student well-being and success. As a result of these measures, the college saw double-digit increases in student retention and academic achievement in just one academic year. In just 2 years, Blight had record-setting years, raising over $20 million for Wesleyan College, allowing the school to support its students through the creation of new scholarships, enhanced and refurbished learning environments, and a vibrant campus community. In 2024, Blight launched a 5-year strategic plan aimed at future-proofing the college, championing innovative learning for students, and fostering community connections and partnerships. Beyond her presidential duties, Blight is involved in several boards and committees, including the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Georgia, Goodwill Industries of Middle Georgia, the Macon Chamber of Commerce, and the William I.H. and Lula E. Pitts Foundation. Blight was named the Executive Leaders Champion of Transformative Change at the Central Georgia Women of Impact Awards, and she is one of Macon Magazine's top 5 under 40 leaders. Please join me by welcoming President Blight and our featured speaker, Michelle Nunn, to the stage.
I think our bios took all the time, so I think that's all the time we have for today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Everybody can hear me? Wonderful. I want to talk a little bit about your career journey and your background. How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, well, you heard the bio version. Maybe I'll give you like the behind-the-scenes version, which doesn't quite always sound exactly the same. But I was talking to some of the amazing students back there. Raise your hands. I'm so impressed and inspired by your student body, and it's exciting for me. I have to say, first of all, it's just exciting for me to be at Wesleyan because this has been such an important community and institution for our family. I have a grandmother who graduated from Wesleyan in 1926, and I have my beloved Aunt Betty who also graduated from Wesleyan and was the biggest possible fan of Wesleyan. How many people here know Aunt Betty? Yeah, so. She is very much in our memory and very much someone who I consider to be an inspiration. So grateful to be back and connected with that legacy and that tradition. So when I graduated from college, we were talking, all of your students seemed to have a much better plan than I did when I graduated from college, seemed much more clear about what it is that they were doing. But I knew that I wanted to do something to make a difference. I didn't know exactly what that was. Because I think what you'll find is sometimes you do things by process of elimination. I thought I would go to law school. I interned for a judge for 2 weeks and realized that is not the right path for me. And the legal community is really lucky and fortunate that I had that 2-week experience. So I then went on and I applied for the Peace Corps because I thought I wanted to do something internationally and globally around poverty. And in the meantime, I met a couple of people who were starting something that was a volunteer organization that they had called Hands on Atlanta. And they literally passed around empty beer mugs in Manuel's Tavern to collect money to get it started. And we started volunteering. I became the executive director of Hands on Atlanta, which was a glorified internship. And I worked in the Days Inn closet, which I thought was very extraordinary, actually, to have my own office. And worked for 10 hours a week and grew that organization over time with a community of others to become what was one of the largest kind of volunteer organizations in the country. We started to see how it was spreading around the world, everywhere from Hands on Manila to Hands on Nashville. And eventually we merged it with an organization called Points of Light. And so while Hands On had our origin story at Manuel's Tavern, Points of Light was started by President George H.W. Bush at Camp David. So a really different kind of set of organizations, but I came together to lead the combined organization. I will tell you, it is intimidating to have an interview with a former president, but President George H.W. Bush was a very, we laughed because I was a lifelong Democrat, obviously a lifelong Republican, but we really saw the incredibly important work of service in the same way. And so Points of Light, I worked there for 7+ years, one of the largest, actually the largest sort of network focused on volunteering in the world. And I then ran for the Senate in 2014. It's one of those things where people aren't quite sure whether to put that on your bio, like, okay, she ran, but she didn't win. But that's a part of the story too, right? Because when I was talking to the students who were saying, we want to hear about like the hard things and not just the easy things. So I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity and what that brought me and my family in terms of experience. But I then had a midlife crisis and let that happen for a few months. And I then found the organization CARE, which was looking for a CEO. And CARE, it does stand for Cooperative Assistance and Relief in Europe. And if you think about, how many of you all have ever had a care package in your life? Either sent a care package or received a care package, right? Actually, it comes from the organization CARE. A couple of people said, we're not going to stand on the sidelines and watch people face into starvation in post-World War II Europe, and they figured out how to transport care packages with food to 20,000 people from Philly to Le Havre, France, and over the next 15 years, that turned into 100 million care packages. And so care packages come from the organization CARE. We then turned our name into Cooperative Assistance for Relief Everywhere. We now work in over 109 countries. Last year, we served 167 million people around the world. And one of the things that we've learned over our almost 80 years is that when you center your work on women and girls, that you have a disproportionate impact on families and communities and changing the world, which is also something that you know about here at Wesleyan. So, so that's the behind the scenes bio of a little bit more about how I got to where I am today.
Well, to play off what our students were asking you, the next question I have is talk to us a little bit about the hard stuff, the obstacles, the challenges, what you encountered as you rose to this position.
Yeah, well, first of all, I should also acknowledge that my parents are in the room, and my husband, and our family members, Janet and George Nunn. So I have an extraordinary ecosystem of family and community, and very much I think, a set of role models around public service. And so I will say that I came naturally to the idea of service. Both my parents, I mentioned Aunt Betty, I mentioned my grandmother, all a part of our sort of family tradition. But I think, you know, for me, and I think for a lot of women leaders, finding your voice in terms of your own sense of confidence and your own sense of leadership was a journey for me. I was not, unlike the students that I met that I think are bold and ready for leadership in the world, I think I came to the world a little bit shy. My mom tells the story of when she literally could not drop me off at kindergarten without my circling back and showing back up at the car. So she stayed in the kindergarten classroom for 2 weeks, which I think most child psychologists would not recommend going forward. But again, I think the idea of being shy, a little bit, I tell my children I would cry before I had to do public speaking, like on the floor crying by myself, not in front of others, but I just really, it took me a while to emerge into a place of feeling like I had the confidence for leadership. And in fact, when they called me executive director at Hands-On Atlanta, I thought, I can't be executive director of anything. But so I think that sort of sense of imposter syndrome, of a sense of how do we have that confidence? As I think about, when you think about women running for political office, there's lots of studies that say when men see an open political seat, they say, well, I'm running for that, sign me up, right? And women often have to be sort of, have a lot of people tell them, you should run for that political office, and not just one person, but maybe many people. So I think just that sense of confidence, of growing that, and of being willing to risk failure. And for me, running for public office, there's nothing more public than losing, a political race, and being able to both decide to do that and then to ultimately to face into losing and to move through, that sense of failure, and to recognize that you can do that and you can keep doing it too. I can tell you that.
For many of our students in the room and young women here, you do a lot of hiring. You've got a lot of staff. You got a big staff. Talk to us about some of the strengths or characteristics and traits that you look for when you're hiring, when you're promoting, and those qualities, leadership qualities that spark an interest in you with candidates.
Yeah. Well, I think passion for what you're doing is sort of first and foremost. You have to have that sense of inspiration and dedication and commitment, especially for a mission-driven organization, right? And this is a community that's mission-driven. I think so many people in this room are mission-driven. So that real drive and sense that somebody wants to be a part of a mission, and that they have that deep commitment. I think intellectual capability, the ability to have a sense that somebody is going to bring some of that skill set that is required for the job, and then I think the issue of like perseverance, determination, dogged dedication, because most everything that we're trying to do in the world, if it's solving a big problem or taking on a big challenge, is going to take that. And so I happen to work with colleagues that are working at this very moment in Gaza and in Haiti and in Yemen, and the resilience and the perseverance and that deep and abiding dedication are the qualities that I think allow them to to literally face into the fire and to do that work. And I think all of us, whether we're, as my humanitarian vice president says, we have humanitarians in boots and we have humanitarians in suits. So we all have a different role to play. But even for those of us who are in suits, I think that determination is a big part of what I'm looking for.
And leadership style. Thinking about your leadership style and how it might differ from maybe male counterparts. What have you developed as the years have gone by? What do you see in others that you admire, that maybe you've borrowed? Talk to me a little bit about leadership styles.
Yeah, I think I aspire to a sort of servant leadership sensibility. I see my job as the CEO of CARE as supporting the people around the world who are doing the hardest work around the world. And so that sometimes means that I'm trying to raise money for them. That sometimes means that I'm trying to ensure that our organizational strategy and structures is supporting them. That sometimes means that I'm just cheering them on and trying trying to make sure that, sending out a note to just say, I'm inspired by what you're doing, I'm grateful for what you're doing. I think I hope that I'm a good listener. I think that that is not always a quality of leadership that I think is as fully appreciated. I think sometimes leaders are rewarded for doing a lot of talking, but maybe not as much on the listening front. But I think that really trying to listen for being challenged and changing your mind, to try and build a kind of community in which people can have divergent opinions, and creating that kind of ecosystem that allows for people to challenge one another, but also ultimately to align around a decision. And I think that means deep listening.
I couldn't agree more. Whenever we're in leadership team meetings, you want some dissent. You want somebody to give you that sober second thought and thinking about that, and you're only going to catch that if you are in fact listening to them.
Yeah.
Women's empowerment. Talk to me, what does it mean to you, and how do you take steps to support it and empower others and to implement it in your daily life, your core business?
Yeah, I mean, so CARE's work, if you think about our mission, is to save lives and to defeat poverty and to achieve social justice. So it's a big vision. And we say that we center that work around women and girls. And, I think there's a lot of abstract ways of understanding gender equality, and we know that from the surveys and the research that we're perhaps hundreds of years away from achieving gender equality as it relates to leadership and economics and a whole set of measures. But maybe just one story for me exemplifies this when I think about it, because it's actually quite a simple story and a simple idea. I was in Afghanistan. I was talking to one of your students who's coming from Afghanistan earlier, and it was a few years ago. It was before the fall of Afghanistan and the takeover of Taliban. But CARE works around girls' education in a number of places around the world, including Afghanistan. I went to visit a community school. We sat together in a much more modest room than this, but imagine on this side there was a group of elementary school boys, on this side a group of elementary school girls, having a conversation with them, so excited about learning, had not all had the opportunity to go to school, so they were just, really so inspired by the opportunity to go to school, and raising their hands to tell me what their favorite subject was and what they were most excited about learning. And one of my cheeky British colleagues asked them, who's the smartest in this class? Who's the smartest one in this class? And I thought, what are we gonna say here? And a little girl in the back of the room stood up, parted, the seas parted, she walked up, stood in front of us and said, I am the smartest in the class. And I thought, that's what we want. We want every girl in the world to have the opportunity to fulfill her full potential. We want that for every woman in the world, right? And to me, that sort of is what we're working for. And it can feel so elusive, especially when you think about, for instance, the setbacks in Afghanistan, the challenges that women and girls are facing around the world in such extraordinary measure. But I do think of that little girl and the fact that even in Afghanistan, you cannot uneducate a girl.
I want to talk a little bit, switch gears on mentors and mentorship. Did you have a mentor or role model? You talked about your family and parents, but professionally that had a significant influence on your career. How did their guidance shape you in your professional growth? Do you mentor others?
Yes. I mean, and I think so many of us are lucky to have a lot of different mentors, and I feel that I have been surrounded by a community of mentors. Because I'm at Wesley, and I'm going to answer the question a little differently, which is I'm going to talk about my grandmother, and I'm going to talk about my Aunt Betty, because they were really role models for me and a point of great inspiration. So my grandmother spent most of her life in Middle Georgia. She had not traveled on an airplane before she went to my parents' wedding and flew across the country to Washington State. So she was in her 60s when she did that. And her husband died when she was in her 60s, and I think she sort of thought maybe that was going to be sort of the end of her active life. Instead, what happened was she had another 30 plus years of traveling the world. And in my basement, much to the chagrin of my husband, who's also here, Ron, I have a map that is literally falling apart. But it is a map of the world with little pins where my grandmother traveled around the world. Around the world, Tehran, Mexico City, Baghdad, and she, had this way of she had enormous intellectual curiosity, and she banded together with Miss Benita, who lived across the street from George and Janet, and they would drive across the country to Mexico through Central America. These two women in their 70s. She traveled with young people in her 80s around the world, and so that sense of and I know so many people like that, those people that are in love with the world and that find a way of demonstrating that. And even as her world got much smaller, she would come to the Chinese restaurant in Macon and make best friends with the owners. And she would find ways of finding that largeness in the world, even in her smaller community in her 90s. So that example for me is so important. And then I would just say my Aunt Betty, who is well known to this community and to so many, had so many traits, but one of them was just enormous enthusiasm for life and the world. But she was also a really great storyteller. And I bet there's a bunch of people here who are know or even are those great Southern storytellers who know how to take some small story and turn it into a big yarn. And that's not my natural gift, but I will say that I have found that in the work of trying to create change in the world, that the ability to tell a story is perhaps one of the most important things. The ability to say that we're going to take what's happening in Gaza, for instance, and we're not going to just talk about tens of thousands of people. I'm going to tell you a specific story of a woman who just gave birth on October the 8th, and think about what her life has been like for the last 365 days with a small baby and other children, and every day worried about their safety. So taking the specific and turning that into a broader story, I think, is a part of their sort of leadership examples for me. And I would just go on to say, I think we all need to find those mentors that we need in the world, and that every mentor that I've ever had, and I would say any mentee that I've ever had, I would say, as the mentor, you are often the gift. It's a reciprocal relationship, right? So you're always getting more than you're able to give in these relationships. And I hope that everybody has found that they are surrounded by, and especially the students, it sounds like you have an amazing set of mentorship programs, that you're starting that tradition, that sense of what's possible there that they can build upon.
We do, and we're very proud of that through our Career Development Center, and surrounding young women with industry professionals and individuals that can give them a life advice, career advice, and a network that they can turn to both while they're in school and after they graduate, which is so powerful. So powerful. One piece of advice, and if you want to do two, it's fine too, okay, that you would give young professionals starting their career in today's environment.
Well, there's a quote by, and I won't get it exactly right, by Frederick Buechner, who, and he's a theologian, but he says that, and again, paraphrasing, that you should try and find the place where your great gift meets the world's great need. And if you can find that, then you will have a life of great fulfillment. And so, and we find that in different ways. But I would just sort of commend that idea to help, to really help guide people towards where's your passion and where can you make the world a better place, and really find a way of making a big difference in the world.
And I do have here, and I'm not sure if that was your favorite quote, but I do love to ask people what is, in fact, your favorite quote.
Yeah, it might change based upon the day. So, but I think, with this audience, maybe Margaret Mead's quote that what is it, never think that a small group of people won't change the world, because it's the only thing that ever has, in essence. And I do believe that the power of people coming together to make a difference in the world is what creates change.
Absolutely. Now, before we came up here, I had the students who are sitting at the back say, President Blight, please do not take up all the time, because we have been talking to Michelle and we have questions for her. So I promise I've left time. I want to turn it over to anybody who has questions, but particularly if we have any from students, to please, come forward and ask.
And because I did all the talking when we were together, and I asked you all the questions, so I'm ready for your questions.
Rohini, sure.
Good evening, my name is Rohini. So my question is, how do you stay motivated and focused when facing the scale of global challenges that CARE addresses?
Thank you. I'm thinking about that a lot this week. The week began, and it feels like a long time ago, but the week began with October the 7th, which was the 1-year anniversary of the terrible tragedy and massacre of so many in Israel, and also a devastating humanitarian crisis and the destruction and death in Gaza over the ensuing days. And CARE has worked in Gaza for decades, many decades, and so each day this week I have started my day with having different meetings with our team members from the Middle East, from Yemen and from Gaza and the West Bank and Syria and Turkey, and it is a very frightening time for people in the Middle East, and it is a very sobering thing to hear the accounts of our team members who are working every day in Gaza. And in fact, just earlier this morning, I found out that one of the partners that CARE works with, a group of physicians, some of whom I had met when I was there earlier in the year, were killed this week doing humanitarian service, providing, they refused to leave an area where people were facing, extraordinary health needs, and so it's hard to hold that and to also hold on to the day-to-day work, the hope for going forward. But I think what keeps me, to continue to feel inspired about that is that I have colleagues around the world every day that I think about. I have a colleague named Bushra who is from Yemen and leads one of our biggest humanitarian teams in Yemen, and she does it in full burqa, and she has to have an escort everywhere that she goes. And the community members that started with a sense of great, I would say, derision and skepticism about her leadership, she says that she now meets fathers who say, I want my little girl to grow up like you, Bushra. And I have another colleague named Umi who is a Somalian woman, and women in Somalia, if you just think about one statistic, 90% of the women in Somalia face and have experienced female genital mutilation. So the level of challenge for a woman leader in Somalia, and actually the day-to-day reality of the dangers that she faces every single day as she does her job, their perseverance, their determination, their inspiration gives me enormous hope and gives me a sense of, if they can do it, then I surely can.
Thank you so much. This is truly inspiring, and it was great connecting with you.
I loved it. And I've offered out internships at CARE, so I'm hoping that some of y'all will take me up on that.
I see our Executive Director of our Career Development Center just doing a big thumbs up over there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Anybody else?
My name is Julia. What experiences have what experiences have most shaped your view on global poverty and social justice?
Such a good question. So I think that, I mean, look, we've all studied issues, and we can read every single day in our different news feeds about the challenges that are happening in the world. But I think my sort of direct experience of meeting especially women around the world and sort of understanding some of their daily realities. I have maybe just one example that I think about often and that has been an important, I think, point of inspiration and a touchstone for me. It's a woman named Salamatu who is from Cote d'Ivoire, and I met her a couple of years ago, and she told me about her story. She was 13 years old when she was married against her will to a man who was in his 60s, and was his second wife. She was mistreated, she was physically abused. She had one dress that she would wear over and over again, and she would wear it wet when she had to wash it. She met one of our CARE staff members, and she found out about a program that CARE does that's called the Village Savings and Loan Program. It's a savings group where you come together with others and you put in a little bit of your money and then you lend it out to one another. So Salamatu ends up having a real knack for business. She starts a salt business. She grows that business. And her older children were not able to go to school. She couldn't afford to send them. She buys them a used car, and they start a taxi service. She sends her younger children to school. She divorces her husband. She remarries. And along the way, she sets up these savings groups for 20,000 other women. One woman, Salamatu. And she told me this story, and then I have since had the chance to meet with her several times on my visits to West Africa. And the last time I was with her, I asked her, you know, what can I do to support you? And she said, I want to work with other women like me, and I want to get more women in these savings groups. And she said, I want you to invest in us to do this, and so we did. We invested in the training and support, and they called themselves the Amazons, the Amazon women. And so she sent me a video a couple months ago, and she said, with her and some of the other Amazon women, and 48 women have created groups that now include 48,000 women in Cote d'Ivoire. And she's done this over the course of 2 years now. And so, you know, the experience of someone like Salamatu shows me, one, that there are these really big, deep set of challenges that women face around the world, and things like early childhood marriage, systemic poverty, lack of access to markets, lack of economic power. But it's also taught me that, one, that when women and men, and when people come together, that community and that connection can be a huge point of change making for them. So it's partly the social capital, but it's also the financial independence that she was able to achieve. And if you look at the history of gender equality, then it so often ties back to women's economic power and their ability to have some control over resources. So it's women like Salamatu that have taught me both the hard lessons of the challenges in the world, but also the extraordinary human potential for change making, and so I hold that very dear.
Thank you. That was a powerful story.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. So what advice do you have for women who also want to get into politics?
Yes, I talked to you earlier, Jennifer, and I talked to a few others. How many of the students, anybody say, would they be willing to think about going into politics?
You have to encourage them.
All right, so we need a little encouragement. I would encourage you all to think about that. No matter what politics can be not something that you do your whole career. My dad is an example. He served for 24 years, but he's had a whole second career afterwards. A lot of people have a career first and then they go into politics. But if you look at what it's going to take for us to have true gender equality, we have to have women in political leadership. And that's true in the United States, but that's true in every country around the world. And, I think we simply cannot realize our full potential. And we see it in every study, every corporate diversity study. Every study tells us that when you have a diverse set of people, of leaders around a table, you make better decisions, you have better earnings, all of those things happen, you have better governance. We know that for instance, we know that when women are involved in peace treaties, that you actually have sustained peace versus peace that devolves back into conflict. So, my only advice is just do it. Just be willing to sort of raise your hand. Don't wait, like I did, for other people to encourage you. Think about it and think about your own capacity to make a difference, which equals anybody else's capacity to make a difference. And that if we do not have women, if we do not have mothers, if we do not have young people, if we do not have elders, but women who have perspective about lived experience to bring to policy making, then we simply are less than we can and should be in the world. And so I hope everyone, if you take away one thing from the conversation, I hope you'll take away a sense of inspiration about your own power for leadership.
Thank you for your advice.
Hi, I'm Latasha Walker Hall. I am part of the grad program. I will walk 25, definitely. So my question is, what was the most impactful moment you experienced while working with CARES where you directly saw the positive change your work was making on someone else's life?
Yeah. I think, we do so many programs at CARE. So we do healthcare system work in India where, for instance, we've worked with the entire state of Bihar, which is over 100 million people. So imagine 10 plus Georgias, and worked with their health system to bring down infant and maternal mortality. And in that process, we're estimating that over 10,000 babies are living each year as a result of that systemic work. So like that kind of work. We're also doing girls' education. So I have the opportunity to see so many girls around the world have their education interrupted in elementary school, in middle school, where they're the ones that the family has to turn to do chores or to pick up economic slack, or perhaps they just don't have enough funds for all of the children to go to school. And if they don't have the opportunity to go on to secondary school, then their life's trajectory is very constrained compared to someone who has that opportunity. So CARE has an accelerated learning program, and we have a 1-year program where we can help girls catch up so that they're ready to graduate to secondary school. And we have a 90% plus graduation onto secondary school. And so when I meet those girls that are having that opportunity, they are on fire for learning, and it is extraordinary to see them. And then another example is our savings group model. And I mentioned Salamatu, but she's one of 20 million people that CARE works with. So we have the largest micro savings program in the world, and it's in 60 different countries, and our goal in the next few years is to get it to 60 million people. So there are 700 million women right now that do not have access to any kind of financial savings or commercial access to financing at all. And so, but we could change that. Like within the next 10 years, we could find ways of changing that and taking those women that are at the bottom of the economic power pyramid or ladder and giving them the potential to realize their potential, the Salamatus of the world. So those are all sort of examples of some of the programs that I find that we're finding great inspiration and impact in, and that I'm grateful to be a part of.
Thank you, simply amazing.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much. That was inspiring, and it was just a balm. So thank you. I wanted to ask you a question specifically about your liberal arts undergraduate education and how you think that may have contributed to your trajectory, your path in life.
Yeah, no, thank you. I have to confess that when I decided to be a history major with a religion minor, that it was not with any great sense of how that was going to lead me to professional career next steps. But what I did was follow my passion. You know, I loved history and I loved the study of religion, and I was, you know, I had a lot of good fortune that I was able to, I think, turn that into a career path, mainly because I think it taught me how to, all those things that we all know from a liberal arts perspective, right? It taught me how to think, it taught me how to write, it taught me how to consider and contextualize the sort of events of today with the events of the past. It helped me to understand societal, you know, context, for instance, for faith and social justice, and also I think perhaps the most important gift was it enabled me to have a sort of lifelong passion for learning, and I think to sort of I have been in love with reading all of my life, but I think the opportunity to study and read in that way that you get to do, and I have to remind you all, for everyone who is in class right now and who's thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much to read, I have so much. Oh, it's such a great gift. Like, enjoy it while you can. This gift of learning for these years is something that you will forever cherish and relish. And if you're lucky, then we all get to carry that with us, and to be able to see our ability to continue to learn throughout our lives, and to take some of those tools that are being instilled by amazing professors here and in places around the world. And so, no, and incredibly grateful for my liberal arts background.
Thank you very much.
No surprise that that question was from Dr. Brandy Simpson-Miller, who's a professor here at Wesley.
Yeah.
History professor.
History, excellent. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm Tara Regal. I'm class of 2019.
Great.
I may have your grandma and your aunt beat for biggest cheerleader, but I was a huge involvement when I was at Wesleyan.
Oh.
But that to say, when I was at Wesleyan, I did not think I had what it took to be on the board of a nonprofit, a starting nonprofit. But can you talk about skills that people don't think about that are used in nonprofit work or used in organizational change? It's like, for me, my husband is DoD background, flight crew. Him and I both were on the board of a nonprofit that helped queer individuals. And it was interesting because it was him, you know, this white guy, straight, you know, he was like, hey, I'm gonna help this nonprofit. Do you think you can help us with your accounting? And I was like, well, I never thought I'd use my accounting like that. I thought to work with a nonprofit, you had to have political science degree. So can you talk about like the non-traditional paths and how big of an impact those can have on an organizational change level?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will just say that nobody who has not served on the board of a nonprofit thinks that they know how they're going to contribute when they're on the board of a nonprofit. Like, no, that's just like true of life in general too, right? You sort of think, oh, I couldn't do that. And then you do it and you realize you have a lot to bring to the table. And so I would just say that, well, you know, if I think about the way we built Hands on Atlanta, which we were all in our early 20s, right? And we had somebody who was a lawyer, we had somebody who was a technology person, we had somebody who was an accountant, we had somebody, those were all the things that you need to run a business, which a nonprofit is partly a business and partly a mission, right? But there is a huge need for a well-rounded set of skills. And a lot of what people can bring from the business community to the nonprofit community, because it's not just content knowledge around, for instance, what it means to run a particular nonprofit or with this particular mission. Every nonprofit has to have an accountant or has to have somebody who's volunteering to do the books, right? And that's also true about strategic management, around HR. And so I would just say that, and if you're a history major, you're going to have a lot of things to bring in terms of your ability to write proposals, for instance, or your ability to be a strategic thinker for the organization. So I am a big believer in the opportunity to volunteer, to find your passion points, and then to recognize that you have skills to bring, perhaps with direct service, but definitely as board members as well. It sounds like you're already on your way.
I work for the DoD, so.
I can't imagine all the great skills that you have to bring, but
no, I mean,
logistics, strategy, accounting, a whole set of things.
Yeah, I mean, I really have learned through the process of like community.
Yep.
And people, and it also with volunteering it's voluntary. You can give as little as much time as you want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I had to learn over time. Is your skill might seem small to you, but that 1 hour you put into designing our logo makes a huge impact.
Absolutely. Such a great, yes, illustration right there of making a difference.
I think we have time for one last question.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, very nice to meet you. I'm Nelson Reyes. I'm the new innovator in residence here at the college. And like you, I ran for Congress as well a couple of years ago, and I lost, unfortunately. But here we are.
Here we are.
So my question is how do you innovate at your organization? And also on a personal level, how do you keep innovating and being creative? Thank you.
Yeah, such a great question. We've been thinking a lot about this because we're doing a strategy plan for CARE, right? And so, we're an 80-year organization. So how do you take an organization and continue to make it relevant over and over and over again over time? And I think the answer is you continue to innovate. And I think one thing that you have to balance, and I will have a conversation in the future, but around how do you take for instance, we have huge issues around safety and security everywhere, so many places that we work, right? And so how do you ensure that your team members in Gaza are both safe, that we have a set of issues around compliance, but also have the creativity and autonomy to carry forward the most innovative plans? And I would say that to me, from a CARE perspective, the most important dimension of innovation is that people who are proximate to the problems have the opportunity to create the solutions. And so for us, that means 95% of our team members are from the places they serve. They're from Afghanistan, they're from Haiti, they're from these communities, and so they're the ones that have the opportunity to say, this is what we need. And the example of that for me is in Niger, we had a Norwegian CARE staff member 30 years ago who came to meet with a group of women, and she had an assignment, she had funding to plant trees with them. And Niger is a desert-like climate, so there was good reason for that. But the women said, we don't want to plant trees. We want to create this savings group together. That savings group with those first 30 people is what's led to 20 million people in 60 countries being a part of that model. And that innovation didn't come from anybody sitting around in a room saying we should start a savings group. It came from the people who were in that community who said, this is what we want and this is what we need. So I think for us that is people-centered change that is allowing those who are most proximate to challenges to create their own futures and to invent the solutions of the future. And as we think about AI and we think about a whole host of future innovations, there is so much potential in the world, but I do believe that we're in a bit of a race between innovation for good and innovation for bad. that. And so, this is a room full of people who are wanting to be innovators for good and for change and for, I think, a creative impact in the world. And I would just say that I am profoundly grateful for this Wesleyan community. It has been a part of that positive change making for many decades, has created multi-generational change, because the reason that I get to sit here and have had the opportunities that I had is because my grandmother sat here and had the educational opportunities, and that was passed on through the generations. And so I guess I would just commend this spirit of innovation, creative change making, and gratitude for the Wesleyan community for being a part of that.
Thank you. So Michelle, on behalf of Wesleyan and our entire community, thank you so much for being here and for representing CARE. I thank you all for being here and sharing in this. I lost track several times of what I wanted to ask you because I was so engaged in your talk. And Gail, who is, I think, watching this from her home or is traveling, thank you so for generously supporting this lecture series and bringing speakers like Michelle to our campus. We so value and appreciate this. So thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you. I so enjoyed that. Thank you.
With the Career Women Network.